Hi there, welcome to Fridays at Noon. I'm Michael Chen, the executive producer and director for this talk show series. Fridays at Noon is a bi-weekly lunch and learn series that provides information and education for both faculty and staff here at the University of Denver. For those of you outside the DU community, feel free to visit www.du.edu/HR and click on the Leading and Learning tab for more information. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you soon in person.
And bring your lunch.
And bring your lunch. Today we're going to turn tables and we're actually going to interview Greg Giesen here. He's normally the one doing the interviews, but we like to turn it up a bit here. He is the manager of employee development, and the topic today is going to be on dysfunctional teams. And so, welcome. So before we start, Greg, tell us a little today about what you like to address specifically in terms of dysfunctional teams.
Well, here's the thing about dysfunctional teams. I taught a 10-week course here on dysfunctional teams, so to try and push it into a half-hour conversation is rather difficult. So what I'm going to do is probably look at it from the perspective of what does a consultant see when he gets called in to work with a dysfunctional team. So it's really through the eyes of a consultant, a third party. Which oftentimes is much more honest and direct because there's no dynamics, no attachment to anything in that situation. And we're also going to talk about really two key areas which we've passed out articles to everybody, and those are going to be up on the website and available for people watching this. In fact, I would say if you're watching this video, print out those articles, have them in front of you so you can follow along, because one of them particularly has a graph that you're going to want to see as we talk about it. So that's really going to be the focus, just a little glimmer of the topic.
On dysfunctional teams.
Yeah.
So given that, obviously, then, because you're giving this talk, that you have some sort of background experience with dysfunctional teams?
I've never done anything.
Nothing?
I don't know why,
Rats.
why I'm here.
All right, end of show. We're done.
No, well, before coming to DU, which was actually 6 months ago, I was a management consultant trainer for 25 years.
Okay.
And doing everything from leadership retreats to one-on-one coaching with managers, employees, to mediating conflicts, to working with groups in conflict, to do team assessments, team building, anything around group dynamics I got involved with for the last 25 years. So that's part of it. Also, as I mentioned or referred to, I taught here for 14 years in the University College.
Okay.
And also wrote a book called Mondays at 3, which is going to be available to all new managers at DU, and it's really a story about a struggling manager and the impact that had on the team around him.
Gotcha.
So, and how he fixed it.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you have a lot of different experiences with groups, both at, teaching, also at a professional, on corporation level.
Yeah.
Have you ever met a company or a team that just didn't seem like they had any sort of dysfunction? Everything just kind of clicked together?
I have. It's rare because usually they don't call me. Because, I'm the one they call when there's trouble, not when they're all singing Kumbaya already. But I have, and I've actually done a retreat with probably 2 or 3 different groups. But here's the thing I want to say about that. You don't start out as a high-performing team. It's like in any relationship people have where it's a solid relationship. The reason it became solid was because of an evolution of working through issues, learning each other's style, adapting, giving in, and making up, and working through conflicts. And so when I was with those teams, I was extremely impressed by how quickly they could address a concern and work through it because they've had practice, and that's what made them high-performing, as opposed to sometimes you see groups that feel like they're high-performing because they've never had conflict and they just all get along, and they just assume they've bypassed all the stages.
Gotcha.
And what I would say is that's probably more of an artificial, superficial dynamic that hasn't been tested.
Good word, artificial, superficial. So then, when you get a call from a company that says, hey, my team, no one's getting along, there's just something wrong, that initial phone call, what would the manager say to you?
What I've found is that most managers don't know what to say. And a lot of people put any kind of dysfunction under the umbrella of team building.
Okay.
So can you do a team building, like a 2-hour team building or something like this? And the idea is, can't we just all get along, and maybe if we just have some fun together for a couple hours, that will just lighten it up a little bit. And when I was young in my career, young like you in my career, I would just do the team building. And then what would happen is if there were dynamics, elephants in the living room and all those things, they'd surface in the team building, and I was completely unprepared for it. And in some cases, it got worse because it's the first time they've been able to really have it out, and nobody was coached or prepared, and there was no structure around it. So
would you have called them out on that then, or would that be another conversation?
Well, it depends. I think to be able to do that, you've got to know what you're doing. And I think early in my career, I probably didn't. Now I do, but now I wouldn't set myself up that way.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would do when I get these team building calls, which I get here at DU as well, I like to assess what the situation is, and that's one of the articles we're going to be talking about, is the 4 steps of assessment that a consultant would do to kind of get a feel for where the team is, and if team building really is the issue, because more often than not, it's not. It's just their umbrella answer to, I don't know what to do, maybe if we just do something light and fun, it's going to help. And sometimes that can actually make it worse.
Well, if you need team building activity, there's this incline down in Colorado Springs. It's a mile high of stairs. That will definitely build some teams.
Yeah, okay. Email me that.
So speaking of articles then, you wrote this one called Organizational Conflict with 4 checkpoints that everyone in the audience member has. It's also on the website as well.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, what this is really from a consultant's eyes, what I would look at, any type of assessment where there looks like there's something going on in the team. And the first place I go is, I want to know who's driving the boat. I want to know who's the leader, what they've done to address it or haven't done, what their comfort level with conflict is. Are they showing up consistently? Are they role modeling the kind of things they're preaching to people? Are they, with their peers showing different behaviors, which I've seen before, where they get mad at another department and they treat them one way, and yet they're preaching we need to all get along another way, and so they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth. And to get a sense of not only how they've done, but when I have found, and I'll be honest, more often than not, it is a leadership issue. Because the leadership creates the culture and sets the standard.
Mm-hmm.
And when it is a leadership issue, then I want to know who's leading them.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes what you'll find is who's leading them is a distant manager or who has no clue what's going on. And so therefore they're not getting the coaching they need. So then you could go all the way to the CEO in some companies.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question is, well, then where really is the problem?
So when you go into these teams and you kind of, assess the situation, you talk to people, how do they feel about having somebody from the outside come in and try to fix an internal issue?
Well, and that's part of, the second part. So the first part is leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's I said. Second part is group dynamics. I want to know what the group's done, like how they get along. Do they have norms, unwritten norms? Are there cliques? Are there strong personalities that influence other people? I've seen in groups where there's been one really difficult person and everybody else kind of had to adjust to that difficult person. And no matter what kind of team building we tried to do until that person was pulled out, could the group actually get back together? So most of them are very receptive, especially seeing me as an outsider. Even at DU, people see me as an outsider because I'm not in their department.
Mm-hmm.
And then they feel more, and they have to buy into that this is a confidential conversation, and I'm not going to use your name in anything you say, and all those kind of things. But we develop a rapport in an interview, and I do that with everybody, and then I have a pretty good feel pretty quickly what's working and what's not. And let me just touch on the other 2 before you ask me another question, because I know you're dying to. So number 3 is, all right, so first off, check the leadership. Check the group dynamics. Third is the accountability factor. And what I mean by that is, are the behaviors that you expect in the workplace around teaming and support, and conflict resolution, and communication, collaboration, even attitude, are those reflected in the performance review? Is there an accountability factor tied to the very behavior that you're trying to? Because if it's not, that's a problem. Because obviously people's behavior will match what they're getting evaluated on. And some of them are very smart about that, and they know that. And so there needs to be a connection so that there's consequences. And the other thing around accountability factor is, if there's been a difficult employee in the past, has it been handled? And has it been handled effectively, or is it not being handled, and a precedent being set to where indirectly you're saying it's okay to be dysfunctional. And then the last one, number 4, and this is all in the article, is there adequate training and resources provided to people?
Mm-hmm.
You know, at DU, we've never had a OD, which is what I'm called, an organizational development consultant here. So if you wanted somebody to do coaching, or you want someone to do mediation, or you want someone to do team building, you'd have to pay somebody outside to come in. And that's if you even knew who to call. Now we've got that internally, and so it makes a big difference because there's readily access. So I would be considered a resource that didn't exist before. And do these groups do team building? And what does that look like? And I don't mean going to a Rockies game and calling that team building, because that's really not. It's really more of going to a Rockies game. Because you talk to the person on your left, on the right, and then who else do you really have any kind of meaningful conversation with? So those are the kind of things that I look at to see. And if just one of those is out of whack, it raises a red flag. If more than one, which usually it is, then whatever problem they called me on, what I can tell you is it's not. That's the symptom. That's not the problem. There's a bigger picture going on around that. And if we really want to resolve it, we need to find out what it is. Otherwise, we're just going to put a little Band-Aid and hope it sticks.
Gotcha. So for everyone in the DU community, he's free, basically. Is what you're saying. So then we also had another handout. It's called the Tuckman Tweaked, which is a long adaptation of a long-standing model of group development using for the forming, storming, norming, and performing stages. Say that 5 times fast. And it seems like that you altered upon that model.
Yeah.
So what was the old model, and how did you come to alter it?
Well, you know, being in management training for all these years, you know, that was one of the primary group dynamics models: forming, storming, norming, performing. Problem is it doesn't go far enough, and it's inadequate, and it's just, for me, it was just too superficial. Because if I'm going to get myself in the middle of things and find out what's going on, I need something a little more in depth. So this is a classic model, by the way, you know, that goes historically. I think Tuckman is even still alive. And if he knew I changed his article, he might turn over in his grave if he's not. But I did. I changed it to make it fit, and I think much more realistic. And of course, our viewers can just look at it, but I want to walk through the model.
Sure. Because
it's critical, and I've taught a whole class on this, you know, a whole 3-hour class on this. So I'll give you the short version of it. But basically, what happens in group dynamics, and it's not just group dynamics, it's individual relationships, it's family dynamics, it's any kind of the softball team, you know, everyone goes through these, where the forming stage is basically, you know, for the most part, it's when you have people coming together for the first time, or people that don't know each other that well, or you're on a committee and people keep sending other people instead of themselves, and you never have the same people, or it could even be a department with high turnover. And so the group never really bonds because there's always new dynamics being added. And so in the forming stage, the reason why it's critical is because groups don't really mature in the forming stage at all. And they rely on the leader, because they need somebody to set direction, set the sail, say, here's what we're going to do, here are some ground rules, here's what everyone's roles and responsibilities are. And that's actually okay in that stage. And it's not micromanaging at all. It's really just getting people in alignment. With the intent of, if it's pretty much the same people and that group evolves, that the leader can adjust their leadership style as the group evolves. So that's kind of the forming stage. Then what typically happens, and it's a good thing, and it's called the storming stage. And my model is by far the most important stage in any relationship, group or individual. And those of you that are married or significant others, you know, you can apply this to that as well, which is, once the novelty wears off of being together with the same people, because, you know, when you're in that forming stage, it's best behavior, you're very conscious of, you're not throwing out your usual humor, you know, you're walking on eggshells, you're just trying to see if you fit in, if people like you, if you like them, and everyone's just nice with each other. But once you get used to people, now all of a sudden, the reason why it's called storming is because your real personality emerges as you get comfortable. And that means your real sense of humor, your real quirks, if you're a judgmental person, that's going to start surfacing. If you're an extrovert, we're going to be hearing about it. If you're an introvert, you might be isolating yourself more. You're not as concerned about first impressions. And that's what creates differences in group dynamics or in a relationship. Like if it was a relationship, it's when the infatuation phase ends. And you're like, so this is what I got? Because the bloom is off the rose in some respects, right? And when that happens, people start to see differences, and you can get annoyed a little bit because you're like, you start to not liking or start to argue, you start putting your opinion out there, all of a sudden the group friction starts to develop. And it's a critical stage, and the reason why it is the other two stages are directly dependent on the success of the storming phase. And so if the group can effectively, with leader-led, because you still need strong leadership at this phase, can resolve issues, can find a way to talk things out, and sometimes that might be bringing in somebody like me. I mean, it's not like every leader needs to be able to have these skills. If you don't, though, you need to know to bring somebody in. Because you don't want to try messing with it yourself unless you know what you're doing. And you find a way. It could be team building. It could just be at the end of a meeting, doing a go-around, check-in with people. There's a lot of mechanisms you can use to get people to start talking, interacting, being a little bit more honest, discussing issues that maybe there's not agreement on, so people can develop the practice of working through differences and conflict. If they don't do that, and that would lead them to the next stage, which is good norming, and that's where I changed the model. I added 2 normings.
Okay.
So as those of you on watching this, you can see it in front of you. It's forming, storming. Storming is a critical piece, and if it's successful, you go to good norming. If it's unsuccessful, you go to bad norming. Now, I usually get called in the bad norming situations. Sometimes it's so bad that there's no way to fix it, but we'll get to that in a second. So let's just say you go the good norming because you've developed these skills, you've been able to really gel and work through things, and this could be a significant other relationship too. Then you just keep building on those because you never stop. You always do what you're developing, and that will eventually get you in a pattern where you can get to performing. And what performing looks like in group dynamics is everybody's stepping up to the plate, everybody's volunteering, everybody owns the group. There's relationship and task coming together. It's like people care for each other and they got your back, and it feels different because you just know that. You can't even tell who the leader is in a group that's in performing because the leader's facilitating, everybody else is taking turns leading. It's a very powerful dynamic. And I don't know if you guys have ever been in one of those groups. I have. But the thing is, like any relationship, you can't coast there. You've got to keep doing the things you did to get there so the work never ends. But at least you know what to do.
Yes.
But here's the problem. If you don't handle conflict well, disruption occurs, the group slides into what's called bad norming, which is where they start to give up. And the bad norms start to take over as the day-to-day way we do things.
Okay.
And if you want to know if you have bad norms, ask the newest people who just entered your department, because they're trying to be accepted and they're noticing what the ground rules are, the ones that aren't spoken. And they're seeing who's talking to who and who's not, and they're probably the most observant of it without opinion, so they're usually the good people to measure it. But the problem with bad norming is if the leader doesn't know what they're doing, sometimes the leader drives them to bad norming because they won't allow this touchy-feely, let's talk it out, this like my way or the highway. There's a lot of ways to go to bad norming. Or it could be that one difficult employee, or it could be the cliques, it could be all those things that just drive a group down. And here's what I've seen. The groups in bad norming, they'll complain a lot. But if it's been there for a while, there's only one way to get out of bad norming. There's only one way to get out of bad norming. Well, actually 2. You could disband the team, blow it up.
Which we don't want.
Or you have to go in reverse. You have to go back to storming to work through the issues that created the bad norming. And for some people, just being honest, the thought of revisiting all these elephants in the living room and this history and this bad blood, if there is any, or addressing the leader who's just completely dysfunctional, feels much more painful than just living with the dysfunctional norms which they've already gotten used to. And then there's marriage. You can see marriages like that. You can see families. You can see everything, right? It becomes an enabling situation. And sometimes the organization, that's why if the leader of the leader is not connected to the leader, what will happen is they don't know that's going on, and all they're going to judge the group on is, on paper, the results they're getting.
Yes.
And what the leader tells them. And many leaders will say it's fine. Yeah, we have a little conflict, but it's fine. So those are essentially the 4 stages, and like in any relationship, it all comes down to how well you do the storming And like I said, if you guys have groups where it's just constant turnover, you're never even going to get to storming, more than likely. So you're going to always be in the forming stage, and then you need strong leadership and just give in because that's what it's going to be, and just forge your relationship individually with your supervisor. But if you want a group to actually own and maturate, you've got to work through that together, and you've got to then go to good norming and then storming. So that's the model, and that's why I think it works better because it really shows where the work is in group dynamics.
And the different possibilities of the group dynamics
Yeah.
of this functional team
Yeah.
and such. So it sounds like there's a lot of resources out there, there's a lot of models, there's a lot of science behind it. So what do you think then is like the key to moving a team from storming to that high performing stage?
I think it comes down to the leader's comfort level with doing group dynamics kind of facilitation,
Okay.
including if it's themselves. I've had many leaders who they knew they were struggling, so maybe reluctantly, but they agreed to do a 360, where they got evaluated by all the people around them. And that feedback was an aha moment.
Gotcha.
And the thing is, though, if a group's struggling, you want to make sure that you've got somebody that can help you through it. And if it's not your immediate supervisor, then you need some kind of consultant or assistance to work through it. So I would say, the first part is the comfort level with that piece, knowing what your resources are, getting a feedback loop that works both ways. The problem with performance reviews, and I don't know DU well enough to know if it's a factor here, is it's one-way process. It shouldn't be it should never be a one-way process. It should always be a two-way process because you got two people involved. And if it's a one-way process, that's a power dynamic that doesn't necessarily contribute well to if there's a dysfunctional component. But leaders need to get feedback. The team needs to be able to be actively involved, like those 4 steps. There needs to be accountability written in, and there needs to be opportunity for training for those that want to improve in the soft skills, maybe even an expectation around that. So that'd be
Gotcha. So then with those, I guess specific here at DU, what sort of advice do you have for dysfunctional teams here at the University of Denver?
Yeah. Truthfully, I'd say the first thing is consult with me.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because then we can look at all the options. Of course, we know on our Leading and Learning website page, much of the resources are already out there, from classes to the consulting services, from articles. These articles, we write one a week pretty much and put them up there on these relevant topics. We've got this show. We've got all the assessments that exist on campus. We just got a plethora of stuff, and we haven't even come halfway through with the website right at this point. So that's all evolving as we speak. So those are also additional resources. And we're going to be coming out with all these classes in the fall, certificate management programs, certificate programs for staff. We're going to have lynda.com, which I just signed the contract today, which is going to be online learning as part of this, and part of it will be incorporated into these certificate programs. And they have every topic from A to Z, broken up into 3-minute segments, which you would particularly like.
Sounds awesome, yes.
And so we've got a wealth of resources. It's just a matter of acting on it, having a phone call, and maybe starting the conversation.
Gotcha. So then, I guess for new managers who are watching this, do you have any advice if they come into a team that's already dysfunctioning?
I would say, go through a honeymoon phase of asking a lot of questions, trying to get a feel, maybe even, like in this book, when is it 3? The character in this book keeps a journal, management journal. And in the journal, it's what they learned, the mistakes they made, insights, teachings they went to, wondering how to apply it, and it was strictly just for management. Nothing else is in there. And that ended up helping this character in the book because he could go back to his notes and kind of not have to relearn a lesson. So that's another thing. But also, we offer one-on-one coaching to anybody, employees, staff, right now. There's a mentor program out there. There are so many resources to have. They need a confidant. And it might be their supervisor, but in some cases, maybe it's better if it's not. And so we have all those resources for those new managers. So I would say, take advantage of it. Take advantage of this free book. Do whatever they need to do to make sure that they are committed to professional development and it's showing up in their goals and all those kind of things.
Gotcha. Well, do you have any last words for everyone in the room and those who are watching online?
No, I'd say just go to you're already on the Leading and Learning website because you couldn't get this video. Stay in touch with us, take advantage of this, make it work, and there are a lot of options with dysfunctional teams. We have another one where we do a team manager diagnosis. We've kind of talked a little bit about that, where we interview people. Or you could do a paper and pencil survey type thing online. There's a lot of ways to kind of get a feel of the climate of your own group. But the main thing is get support for pursuing this conversation from whoever you report to, and bring us in and let's get involved, because now that we have this OD, organizational development component of HR, take advantage of it because it's free.
And then for those who are wanting to find a way to contact you, what's your contact information?
Well, again, it's on the website, but it's Greg Giesen, Giesen @du.edu, and that's probably the best way to get it.
Great. All right, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you